Follow us on Twitter @BP Show. This is The Bill Press Show.
Hello, hello, and welcome to a very special holiday podcast here for The Bill Press Show. That's me, Bill Press. Good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're enjoying the holidays. And one of the most exciting things of this year, this political year, was the number of women running for office and women winning for office and now women leading the nation. We've never seen anything like it with the Democratic winning back control of the House. It not only means that we have some accountability for Donald Trump, that the whole system of checks and balances is now in place, but also that the direction of the United States Congress has changed, as well as the makeup and the outlook and the tone and the diversity of the United States Congress. It will never be and never look the same again. One of the organizations that was way out in front and made a great contribution to that success by so many women this year is Emerge America, whose founder and president, Andrea Dew Steele, a longtime friend from California, joins us in studio. So good to see you again.
So good to see you, Bill.
Congratulations again. Tell us about first Emerge America. When did you have this vision of creating it? When did you get started, and how's it going?
Well, in 2002, it was a dark time. You might remember, right? This guy, George Bush, was in office.
Do I ever? Right.
And I was trying to figure out how I could make a contribution. And I had worked in the Year of the Woman right here in Washington to get Carol Moseley Braun elected, 1992.
Ooh, yeah.
And you fast forward to 2002, and I started looking at the numbers of women, and I was sitting in San Francisco, and I decided to look up my own supervisor, and I realized that there were only 2 women out of 11. In San Francisco.
In San Francisco, of all places.
Which I thought, I'm a native Floridian, I thought San Francisco was this lefty place. I'd only been there a couple of years. So I started doing some more research. And at the same time, a friend of mine came to me and said, I had been asking her to run for a couple of years. And she finally came to me and she said, okay, Andrea, I'm ready to run. What do I do? And I realized this amazing woman who wanted to run for district attorney, there was nowhere to send her. And that's when I started thinking, maybe if we could do more to give women the tools to run and not make every single woman be an entrepreneur, maybe we could get more women in the pipeline. Mm-hmm. Now, this friend of mine went on to do well for herself. She won that race for DA. Then she went on and ran for AG, and now she's our U.S. Senator, Kamala Harris. And she was one of my inspirations. And it really is simple. It's like education is the path to so much. And it's the same in politics. Once you give women the tools to run for office, then they often do that. So that's what I did in 2002. And then in 2005, I started Emerge America. So we could take this model of recruitment, intensive training, because our training is 6 months long, 1 weekend a month.
Whoa.
And we also do a 3-day boot camp for women who need immediate training. And then the other powerful part of our model is the sisterhood, the network. But in 2005, I wanted to make sure we could bring this across the country. And we're now in 25 states and growing with the desire to have a presence in all 50 states by 2020.
How many candidates did you help this year?
This year, so far, because there's still races, we have won 406 races. So we have won. So we have won 406 races this year.
Wow. Which
is phenomenal. And we have 5 women who are starting in Congress. They're here this week. And we won at every level of the ballot. Our sweet spot is the state legislature. So we won approximately 150 races in the state legislature and flipped about 45 seats from red to blue. So it's exciting. Our model is working. It's working in red states. It's working in blue states. And when you give women the tools, they do the right thing.
So you start at city council level, is that it?
Well, we start at every level. Right out in California, we have water board, school board, city college. Again, district attorney, the incredibly important race.
Right.
That so many women who run for district attorney, they're lawyers. They're not necessarily political animals. So we give those women the tools. Judges, sheriffs. There are 520,000 offices in this country, Bill. Isn't that amazing?
Wow.
And if you really want to change...
525 elected offices.
Yes,
Yeah.
520,000. If you want to change this country and change the policies that we see, you have to change the policymakers. We have to build a more reflective democracy. So it's not just a nice thing to get women in office. It's strategic. It's a way to achieve certain policy outcomes.
Right. What kind of, you say give them the resources, give them the skills or the tools that they need. What are we talking about? I mean, basic organizational tools, fundraising tools?
Well, it's everything
what do
you
you
need
focus
to
on?
know how to run a campaign. So we start with communications, because if you can't communicate who you are and your authentic message, you can't win a race. So that's the number one thing that we start with all of our trainings. And if you look at some of our women who won, Lucy McBath, Abigail Spamberger, Kim Schreier, Deb Holland, Sochi Torres Small, they all really communicated this authentic message. Then we go into some other nuts and bolts. How do you put together a field plan? Whether you're running for city council or Congress, you have to have a field plan. We go into social media. We go into, certainly in depth, into fundraising. That's super important. How do you get endorsements? How do you work with labor? All of the nuts and bolts, Bill, of running for office that you might know, having worked in politics, and I know, but if you were a woman, and particularly if you're somebody outside of the power structure and you want to get in, this is your entree.
Sure. I mean, those of us who worked in politics a long time, we worked, in my case, worked for candidates, run campaigns. So when you become a candidate, you sort of, you've sort of helped put the program together, right? But people coming from the outside who haven't that experience, it's a total new world.
Exactly. And if you look at somebody like Deb Holland, who is going to be one of the first 2 Native Americans ever elected, she went through Emerge New Mexico in 2007. And she was recruited by her constitutional law professor. And she really, it took her a number of years to see herself as a candidate and not just an activist. And so we really try to help transform these women who are already amazing community leaders. We want to turn them into politicians, and ultimately, we want them at the decision-making tables.
Right. EmergeAmerica.org. What does it mean to you to see, and yesterday we saw the class photo, the other week we saw that when they came to Congress, the class photo of the new incoming members of Congress. And it was remarkable to see so many, over 100 women there in that class. What does this mean for the Congress?
It means everything. Again, having diverse perspectives, having people like Lucy McBath sitting there. She lost her son Jordan in a gun violence incident. Having her sitting at the table, making the laws having to do with reducing gun violence. It's everything. It's these diverse perspectives. Kim Schreier, the first ever female doctor elected to Congress. Imagine having her sitting there talking about health care and reproductive rights.
Right.
And so the optics are important, but it's really what their life experience is, what they're going to bring to the decision-making tables. But I have to tell you, Bill, I look there and I think we're not finished yet, because for every one woman, there are still 3 men. And that's not really a reflective democracy. So I'm really thrilled, and I think, okay, we've got to work twice as hard now.
No, that's so you'd like, what's your goal?
Well, 50-50.
50-50,
Why
all
not?
right.
Is that too much?
Well, I thought you might say 60-40. I mean, the population is not 50-50, is it?
I think it's 51% actually. But
Really? The voting population is probably higher.
It is higher actually.
Yeah.
But I would also be happy if we can get to 30%, because that's what all the research shows, that when you have 30%, you can really start changing the institution. So I want to get to 30%, ideally by 2020. I'd be so happy if we could do that. But then ultimately, of course, 50-50.
Right. So this is a record for the United States Congress, and I think a record number, but it's still nowhere near 50% in the United States Senate. Meanwhile, the Republican ranks of women this year went down.
They did.
I
Is
think
that a
ended up at
surprise?
13.
My goodness, electing the misogynist in chief, I'm not shocked. I mean, I think Republican women are certainly repulsed as well.
Well,
And
it looks, and from what we've seen of the exit polls, that this year the key factor in the 2018 results were college-educated suburban Republican women
yes.
who might have voted for Donald Trump the last time because, after all, he was a Republican, and after 2 years just said, no,
You're
enough's
right.
enough.
And
right?
I have to tell you, though, I am very sorry to see the numbers of Republican women dwindling.
Yeah.
And I would really, I think it's too bad because, again, when you're building a reflective democracy, you want the Republican ranks to also be reflective. And so it's sad that their numbers have gone down so much. And I'm not devoting my time to getting Republican women in because I want to pursue a certain policy agenda. However, I do hope that something changes in that party as well.
So I should have asked that. So your focus is I would assume Democratic pro-choice women.
Actually, just Democratic women.
Really?
We don't
Yeah.
have any litmus tests. We want to give our women the tools. And as you know, the Democratic Party platform, outlines a whole series of issues. But this is partly why we launched in Alabama this year. We launched in South Carolina. We launched in Louisiana, Arkansas. And that's part of us being able to go into a state and say, we want to give women the tools. And we're fortunate to have Gloria Steinem on our advisory board, Cecile Richards, and we certainly are hoping to build this incredible bench of Democratic women.
Pardon me. And we also, we Washington-centric, tend to focus on the Congress and the Senate. I know you don't exclusively at all, but those of us who live here and work here tend to think this is, everything revolves around Washington.
Even though
which
it's only
doesn't.
0.07% of the politicians in this country.
There you go. I didn't realize it was that small. But governorships are so important, and we saw several new Democratic women governors elected this year as well. Extremely important, particularly looking at 2020.
Critical. I'm
Yeah.
so thrilled. And some great women, because we were down to 2 Democratic women in this entire country. So it's exciting that we have Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, right? Michelle Lujan Grisham.
In New Mexico.
Exactly. Kate Brown in Oregon.
Janet Mills in Maine.
That's
I'm
right.
just trying to
Janet
think.
Mills. And then in Kansas.
Yeah, Lucy Whitmer's up. I'm blanking on her name.
Me too. It was a surprise in
Yes.
Kansas.
Yeah,
that
Kansas
they would,
of all places.
Yeah, exactly.
And Nevada too, correct?
Yes. No, Nevada doesn't just, they have 2 women senators, but it was a man who won, which is great because we need that. But we're still, again, underrepresented as women in governorships. However, we definitely went in the right direction, which is exciting.
There are Democrats I know who say that for the Democrats to have a chance getting back the White House in 2020, they have to have a white male candidate.
Well, this is the big debate right now, right? And I
say why. I mean, anyhow, but I'd like to.
I think it's an interesting conversation. I want to make it the new normal for women to run for president. So I am hoping that we have a crowded field of women running so that it's not unusual, right?
Yeah.
And so that's really what I'm hoping to see.
By the way, I think you're going to get your wish because it's already looking that way, right? And when you talk about your Emerge America alumna, Kamala Harris.
Yeah, she's not an alumna, but she was one of my inspirations. So.
Okay. But you've got, Kirsten Gillibrand and Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren. And so
exactly.
There's no lack of women who are looking at it.
Exactly. And they should. I think so. And I think we should have a robust primary and let the best person rise to the top. And I just hope that we will have women in that mix, because if we don't, then it just isn't, to me, it's just not going to be a good primary. You need to have women always in every presidential primary.
And it still astounds me that when you look at other countries so far ahead of the United States in terms of women leaders, whether it's Angela Merkel or back, and Theresa May, in England.
We're around 100th in the world in terms of women's representation, which is astounding, right?
But it's taken us so long.
Yeah. I know. Well, I really believe that it's because we don't have a very family-friendly society, and we don't have universal child care. There are so many impediments to women really realizing their full potential. And if we can get more women in there, if we can pass some more structural reform, as in universal child care, we are one of only 2 countries in the world, I believe, that doesn't have mandatory family leave or paid family leave, right, as a federal program. And that's really criminal, as someone who has 3 children, to not be able to allow women to take off time. So I believe if we can get some of those policies in, women can better realize their full potential.
Right. You live in San Francisco. San Francisco had a very interesting mayor's race this year, and they have that incredibly complicated tiered voting system that I can never understand.
It's true.
But somehow out of it emerged a wonderful new mayor, London Breed.
And she is an Emerge alum.
Oh, she is.
So,
oh, she is.
Yes,
there
and
you
she
go.
was
Right.
she was actually recruited by Kamala Harris to do Emerge, and she says herself she went kicking and screaming, and she graduated from our Emerge program in California in 2008. And she's a great story, right? 2008, and then she ran for supervisor, became the board chair, and then when our mayor tragically died, she assumed leadership and then ended up running for that seat. And it was a doozy. It was a nail biter.
Right.
She ran an incredible race. I was so proud of her, and I'm just so pleased that she's in office.
She became acting mayor and then stepped aside.
Well, she didn't
in
step
order to run. Oh,
Well,
that's
no,
right.
no, it was
they
a
were.
coup.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
yeah. Basically, she was ousted,
She
and
was
they installed
ousted.
a white male venture capitalist, which was somewhat perplexing because you had just had the Women's March, you had Oprah, speaking
And turned
during
off
the
a lot
Oscars.
of people.
Yes.
I mean, that
exactly,
move. Yeah.
exactly. But we actually also, the mayor of Oakland is an Emerge alum as well. She graduated in 2009. So it's nice that those 2 cities have Emerge alums as mayors.
You got the Bay Area covered, huh?
Well,
yeah.
mayoral positions are really important as well.
Extremely
Think about
important.
it. Gavin Newsom was mayor, and now he's going to be our governor. Dianne Feinstein, and it's great to get women in
Jerry
these.
Brown.
Jerry Brown was mayor, exactly, and we've got to get women in these executive positions.
You mentioned one of the most exciting experiences in my life, the Women's March, January 21, 2017. And, in a sense, it never stopped, has it? Right. The
No.
Women's March is still marching.
You're right, Bill.
Running now. Right. I mean, to me, it's this movement that started there here in Washington. That's where I was, but it was all over the country, all over the world. And that energy is just incredible.
It still is incredible. You're right. Again, the election of this, sexual predator and misogynist. I mean, it was the biggest slap that we as women have ever experienced, and it woke a lot of women up. I was awake because I'd been doing this work for years.
Yeah.
A lot of women weren't. And I mean, my friends, the communities, you saw women, and they've continued to really fuel the resistance. They are, and I'm really thrilled about that because, again, as a mother, I really believe that we need to see our activism as an extension of our parenting. And if you are not an activist and you have kids, I don't know what you're doing because it is critical, right? I mean, I'm in California. We have wildfires, the crisis with our climate right now. I mean, what's more important than the air we breathe? What more could we be doing for our children than fighting for the environment? I don't know.
No, it is ironic that it took the number one sexual predator, right, being elected to really wake everybody up and motivate. But I keep hearing, like you mentioned, 406 races that you've won this year.
Just this year, yeah.
I mean, I don't want to give him any credit, but even at the Women's March, there are a lot of people who came out in response to Donald Trump and then said, I got to do something about this. And one thing I can do is, I can get active politically. I can even run for office, right?
You're right. And I like to credit
and
Hillary,
if it took
though.
that to get some people.
I
and
would
Hillary
like to.
too.
I'd like to credit her too, because I would argue that not since
Yes.
JFK has anybody inspired a movement like her. And I think there were a lot of women who thought they were going to have the first woman president and then realized, and watching her be taken down. Arguably the most qualified candidate we've ever had in the history of this country running for president.
President Obama said that when he endorsed her.
Right.
Yeah, he was
and
right.
So I'd like to give her that credit, and I think that she has inspired people. But it was incredible. And last year, in 2017, we are in Virginia, and Democrats flipped 15 seats, and 11 of those seats were flipped by women, and 9 of them were Emerge alums.
No kidding.
And those women woke up, and they went to the march, and they said, I am going to run for office. And they did, and they won. And that's really important. An important message is of the seats flipped this year in Congress. I think we're up to 24 out of the 35 or 36 seats flipped that were flipped by women. So it's just really important.
And the 3 in Virginia, Abigail Spanberg, you mentioned her, and Jennifer Wexton.
Exactly.
Luria,
I think Elaine Luria.
Elaine Luria.
Yeah, she's not an alum, but Abigail Spanberger is. But yes, exactly. That's right.
So you're still there. You're in more states than ever. You mentioned 25 states now.
That's right.
It is Emerge America, emergeamerica.org. So what is your message to particularly young women who are watching, listening, maybe feeling the itch a little bit? What should they do?
Well, I want to say to all women, young, older, consider running for office at some point in your life. Just like people used to do military service, we need to start thinking of running for office as a way of serving our country. And at some point, you can do it for, when you're younger, serve for 10 years in the city council. Do it when you're older. But we need to start considering this as a way, again, of changing our country. There's so many women who want to serve their community, and they just don't see politics as that realm. And we have to keep the momentum going from this year and keep women thinking about running. And I just have to say, we're there for you. We're in 25 states, but we're hosting boot camps next year for women who aren't in those states, 3-day boot camps. And we want to make sure there is not a single woman in this country, Democratic woman, who wants to run for office who doesn't have access to really quality training.
Right. And you're there.
We're there. We're there for them.
emergeamerica.org. You don't have to do it on your own. You've got the sisterhood, right, waiting for you.
That's right, Bill. That's exactly
really
right.
Thanks so much for what you're doing.
Oh, it's a labor of love.
Change the direction of the country. So Andrea Dew Steele, who is the founder and the president of Emerge America. Again, it's emergeamerica.org. Thanks for braving the weather to come in to see us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of your holiday, folks, here on the Bill Press Show, and we'll see you when we're all back together again.
This is the Bill Press Show.